everyone, how y'all doing today? We are finally at the precipice of beginning our Renaissance movies. This is kind of the midpoint where all of these Disney movies kind of come together. So this is like right in the middle of where we like break into the modern age, or at least that's the way it feels to me anyway, because I was born in time to watch most of these movies. The older ones had more of like Walt Disney's handprint on them. So there was definitely a difference between the movies that came out in the gold, silver, and bronze ages versus the Renaissance, the post-Renaissance, and the revival that we're currently in. I think we're currently in. I mean, we'll see what history actually says. So today, I just wanted to walk through the list of all of the movies that we have so far and whether they have been ranked in worst, meh, or best overall. And we're just going to start in order and put them in where they belong. And there'll be some illustrations right over here for you to look at. Let's talk about which Disney movie had the best storylines and which ones were kind of okay and which ones were absolutely terrible. Or at least terrible for Disney's sake, because as we all know, terrible when it comes to Disney is still pretty good for other companies. So let's get into it. The first movie we're going to talk about is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs gets a meh rating for storyline. And this is because the storyline of Snow White really wasn't that important at the time. It was more about what they could do with animation. And that's not entirely bad, but not the best storyline as far as I'm concerned anyway. Next is Pinocchio. Now, Pinocchio had a much better storyline, and it gets a best rating on my list anyway. But the storyline was really good in this movie. It just had a lot of, like, man versus elements kind of things. It was more of an adventure tale. Fantasia is one of my least favorite movies, like in every single way. And I know that's a controversial statement because a lot of people really love Fantasia. I do not even a little bit. And the storyline was absolutely horrible, and I kept falling asleep through it. You can check that out by checking out my Fantasia video. You'll see me falling asleep through it. I mean, it's an act, but you'll see me falling asleep through it. So I gave Fantasia second to last place for Disney movies as far as storylines go. Definitely not one of my favorites. The next movie is Dumbo. Dumbo does have a decidedly better storyline. It looks like I gave it a meh rating. It's just before Snow White. It's a very simple tale, and I guess that must be what I was thinking, but I kind of like Dumbo's storyline pretty well, so I'm a little bit surprised by this one. And that's part of the fun of going through all these again, is you're gonna see some of the things that now surprise me just a little bit, or places where maybe even I've changed my mind. So it'd be kind of fun to go through it. I'm not gonna change any of the rankings though, because I'm not going back through this all again after I've done it one time. It's very fun one time, but that's all I'm gonna do. Bambi I had ranked very high in just about every way, and it does get a best rating. Bambi's just a really good storyline to me. I've seen several different people say that they don't really love the story of Bambi because maybe it's too simple, or it's just kind of a animal versus nature tale. That's what I love about it. It's very realistic. It's about the life of these animals, and you see things repeat over and over again. There's a lot of motifs. I love the storyline to Bambi. It's great. The next one is Saludos Amigos, and now we get into the storylines, if you even want to call it that, of the package era age, the wartime shorts age, as I called it. This is not that great. I don't love any of these movies, and especially as far as the storylines go, don't love it. Saludos Amigos, it just doesn't have a tale to tell. It got last place for storyline altogether, and that's out of all of the movies that we've ranked so far. The next movie then is Three Caballeros. Three Caballeros is like a fun movie, but again, no storyline to it, and it receives the last place that you can get at this point. We're gonna go through these real fast here because they all got real bad as far as storyline goes. Make Mine Music was next, last place. Fun and Fancy Free got last place. The next one is Melody Time, and once again, it got the lowest possible ranking. The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Now this is the exception to the rule. I really liked The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad in a lot of ways. However, I gave it 4th place for storyline, and it's kind of retained that space for a long time. I feel like Bambi, 101 Dalmatians, Pinocchio even, The Great Mouse Detective, a lot of those were better than Ichabod and Mr. Toad. To me, I kind of look at it and I go, yeah, I'm not sure that was the best decision. It should have a lower ranking at this point, but it's what I gave it, so it's what we have, and we'll continue with it because I did legitimately like the storyline to Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Both storylines I thought were interesting and fun, and didn't have like massive plot holes or anything like that. So it's okay. Cinderella is the next one. Cinderella received the best storyline, the best out of the best storyline that you can get for a Disney movie at this point. I loved Cinderella's story, and actually in breaking it down, I discovered that I loved it even more than I thought I did before. So it's an awesome movie, and I couldn't say enough good things about it. Alice in Wonderland was one of those adventure tales that we got a lot of in the Silver Age. I didn't really love it as far as the storyline goes because the storyline seems very confused to me, and it's definitely like a tale that a kid is telling, which is interesting, but it's just not the best movie to have as far as storyline goes. I gave it a meh rating, which I think is deserved. And once again, same thing for Peter Pan. Story in a child's head, they just kind of seems a little bit confused, and there's a lot of just adventure tales of going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. It does all make sense in the end, and when you view it as a child's tale, it's very interesting. It tells a lot about that kid, but it's just not my favorite storyline that you can have. So again, it got a meh rating for this one. The next storyline was Lady and the Tramp. I really love Lady and the Tramp. It's a great movie, and it received 2nd place in the best category. Just an awesome storyline, very well put together. Lady and the Tramp was a breath of fresh air. The next, though, was Sleeping Beauty. Sleeping Beauty got the back end, the lower end of the meh category. Sleeping Beauty is just, at this point, it's just not that great of a storyline. And of course, I talk about all of these individually. If you want to check out my playlist, you can see all the real reasons, the full reasons why I felt this way. But there were a lot of plot holes, a lot of issues, and the fairy godmothers, or whatever they are just not they're awful. They are some of the dumbest characters I think that have ever been created, and nothing that they do actually works, which just makes them even more insufferable for me. So not a fan. 101 Dalmatians, I really like the storyline too, but again, it's one of those adventure tales. I gave 101 Dalmatians a best rating. The storyline for 101 Dalmatians is really fun. It is more of an adventure tale, but it has some pretty high stakes throughout it, and I really enjoyed it, so I gave it a very high rating. The Sword and the Stone, however, this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life. I hate The Sword and the Stone, and I have a complete vendetta against it. I hate everything about it, and it has received the worst rating, or a worst rating. It's not as bad as the package films, because those didn't have storylines at all, but this almost might as well have not had a storyline at all. There's just not a lot of connection between what happens in the movie and the final resolution to the movie. Like, there's nothing that Arthur is learning that would make him be fit to be king. So I just never care about him at all, and I don't care about the story. It deserves this rating. The Jungle Book is a great movie, though. I really liked the storyline to The Jungle Book. It received the best category, and it's just a fun tale. I think it has a lot to do with like single parenthood or just non-traditional families altogether. There's a lot of interesting thoughts that it has in there about non-traditional families and how to take care of a child, and it's a fun movie to watch. I really enjoyed The Jungle Book a lot. As far as the storyline goes, it was a very good storyline, very straightforward. Again, more of an adventure tale, and that's why it gets the end side of the best category. The Aristocats is another movie where I feel like basically The Aristocats is 101 Dalmatians, just redone much less well than 101 Dalmatians. It is basically a repeat of the storylines of Lady and the Tramp and 101 Dalmatians kind of mashed together a little bit, only with cats instead. It's definitely not a movie that I like. It's not like the worst movie ever, but it got the end side, it got the lower side of the meh rating for this. Robin Hood, I don't think is one of the best movies by any means, but for storyline, I think it has a pretty solid storyline. It got the high end of the meh rating for me, and it's a pretty decent movie altogether, especially as far as the storyline goes, but I feel like it has a lot of issues in other areas, which we'll talk about later. The next is Winnie the Pooh, and I love Winnie the Pooh in a lot of ways. However, the storyline isn't really the one way that I really love it. It's a decent movie. It's, again, the story of a child, and it fits right in there with Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, and Winnie the Pooh. I think those three fit together really well. Maybe you can add Jungle Book to that too. The Rescuers got smack dab in the middle. Which is kind of the way I feel about The Rescuers just altogether. It's certainly not a bad movie. It's a good movie. It's just, there's nothing that really stands out about it a ton. So I neither like really, really love it or really, really hate it. On either side, it's just, I kind of just am ambivalent about it. It's not my favorite movie, and it's not the worst movie. I enjoyed it. It's just not my favorite movie by any means out of the Disney canon. However, The Fox and the Hound, I really loved. Really, really, really loved. It has a storyline that I think works really well all the way through. Better than almost any other movie in the Disney canon. I ranked it just a little bit lower than Lady and the Tramp and Cinderella, but it is a great movie and definitely deserves some high accolades. That being said, The Black Cauldron is probably the worst movie I've seen that has a storyline, but it's the lowest movie that has a storyline, just because its storyline doesn't make sense, and everything that happens, it's kind of like Sleeping Beauty, but if Sleeping Beauty was even worse. There's just everything that happens in the movie doesn't make sense to the initial idea and plot of the movie. The more I think about it, the worse the plot holes get. It's an awful movie. I do not recommend it, and I have a vendetta against this one also. The Great Mouse Detective, on the other hand, is an great storyline. I love The Great Mouse Detective. I didn't rank it incredibly high because I felt like there were a few other movies that were a bit better than it as far as the storyline goes. It's the lower end of the best ratings. So definitely really good, which leaves us with Oliver and Company. And a lot of you may come after me in the comments because I've gotten a lot of dislikes and comments from people that really love Oliver and Company. I'm sorry, I don't. I have like a little bit of love for it in my heart, but that's all. It's not a movie that I enjoyed, and I didn't like the storyline. It does get the highest rating of the worst category because I think it does have a decent storyline, but I felt like there were a lot of other movies that were much better than Oliver and Company as far as storyline goes. So it's definitely not one of my favorites. So you guys tell me, when it comes to storyline, what do you think of these different movies? For right now, we are done with the music of the last 5 years for this time being anyway. I'm going to be coming out with a few others, but for right now, it's going to be just ranking videos every 2 or 3 days. So definitely look for those on Mondays and on Fridays. We'll be ranking all of the storyline, music, animation, character, technology, SMACT system. We'll be ranking all of the SMACT ratings. And then I'll be doing a final ranking and lessons animation taught us video. So definitely look out for those. Give this movie a big fat dislike. If you don't like it, that's fine. And I'll talk to you all again later. And you have a good day.